Imagine coming home after closing a $42 million deal, feeling on top of the world, ready to celebrate with your wife of 15 years. You walk over with open arms for your usual evening hug. Nothing dramatic, just that simple gesture couples do every single day. And she steps back, looks you dead in the eyes, and says, "Don't touch me. I'm not playing wife tonight." Like marriage is a shift at McDonald's she just clocked out of. Most men would have exploded right there, begged for explanations, started a screaming match that lasted until 3 a.m. But Brian Carlson? He said two words that changed everything. Perfect. You never will be again. Then he walked into the guest room, locked the door, and launched the most calculated, ice-cold revenge.
Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment my marriage died. Not the funeral, not the burial, but the actual moment the heart stopped beating. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no throwing plates across the kitchen, no discovering sketchy texts from another man on her phone. It was way quieter than that. Deadlier, too. My name is Brian Carlson. I'm 48 years old, and for the past 17 years, I've made a solid living helping companies merge, split, and restructure their entire operations. I analyze assets, assess liabilities, and determine fair value for businesses going through major transitions. I'm damn good at it because I understand something fundamental that most people miss. Most things fall apart long before anyone admits it out loud. The paperwork just makes it official, puts a stamp on what's already dead and buried. I should have applied that wisdom to my own life way sooner than I did. Courtney and I had been married for 15 years. She brought Madison into the relationship, her daughter from her first marriage to Greg Hamilton, a dude I'd never met but heard plenty about over the years. Madison was 5 years old when Courtney and I first got together, and now she's 20, finishing up her junior year at Northwestern. Smart kid. Kind, too. The type of person who actually gives a damn about other people. For years, I thought maybe that's what kept Courtney and me glued together, me being the stable father figure Madison never had growing up, Courtney appreciating the structure and security I provided for both of them. I was dead wrong about all of it. The night everything ended for real, I came home around 7:30 on a normal Tuesday evening. Nothing special, nothing different from 1,000 other Tuesdays. I'd closed a deal that afternoon, a clean acquisition worth $42 million that I'd been working on for 3 months straight. I felt good, loose, like I'd actually accomplished something meaningful. I wanted to share that feeling with my wife, maybe crack open a decent bottle of wine, sit out on the back deck we'd refinished together 3 summers ago when we still pretended to be a team. Courtney was posted up in the living room scrolling through her phone when I walked in. The TV was on, playing something she clearly wasn't watching, just background noise to fill the silence that had been growing between us for months, maybe years if I'm being honest with myself. I walked over with my arms open for our usual evening hug, nothing grand or romantic, just that small daily gesture that says, "I'm home, I'm here, I'm yours." The thing couples do without thinking about it. She stepped back. Not a flinch, not a stumble, a deliberate, measured step backward like I'd just tried to hand her something contaminated, like I was diseased. "Don't touch me," Courtney said, her voice flat and administrative, cold as ice. "I'm not playing wife tonight." The words just hung there in the air between us, sterile and final. Not a complaint, not even an insult, really. Just a job description she was clocking out of, like marriage was a shift at McDonald's and she'd just punched out for the day. I stopped moving. My arms were still half raised, frozen in the space where she should have been, where she'd been 1,000 times before. For maybe 3 seconds, I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the clarification, the "just kidding, bad day at work, sorry, babe." None came. "Perfect," I said quietly, my voice steady and calm. My hands dropped to my sides. "You never will be again." Her eyes widened slightly, just a flicker of confusion crossing her face, like she'd expected a completely different script to play out. An argument, maybe, pleading, The usual dance where I'd ask what was wrong, she'd deflect and make excuses, and we'd pretend it never happened by morning, sweep it under the rug like we always did. But I was done dancing, done pretending, done playing along with her games. I turned around and walked down the hallway without another word, past the framed photo of our wedding day in Napa Valley, both of us smiling like we actually believed in forever. Past the bookshelf I'd built by hand when we first moved into this house, spending weekends measuring and cutting and sanding until it was perfect. Past the closed door of what used to be my home office before Courtney decided one day that it should be her yoga room instead, and I just went along with it like I always did. I opened the guest bedroom door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. The click of that lock was soft, polite even, but in the dead silence of that house, it sounded like a gavel coming down in a courtroom. Final, binding, case closed. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. No anger bubbling up inside me, no sadness, no tears threatening to spill over, just this strange, cold clarity, the kind I usually reserve for balance sheets and due diligence reports when I'm tearing apart a company's financials looking for problems. Liability identified, risk assessed, time to restructure and cut losses. Courtney didn't knock that night, didn't text my phone, didn't call through the door asking if I was okay or if we could talk about what just happened. And honestly, that silence told me everything I needed to know about where we really stood. By morning, she probably assumed I'd be back in the kitchen like always, making coffee with 2 mugs out, asking her what she meant by that comment, waiting for her to smooth everything over with some half-baked excuse about being stressed or hormonal or tired from work. That's how it always went in our marriage. I'd poke at an issue, she'd snap back, I'd absorb the hit and move on, and we'd reset like nothing ever happened. But I wasn't resetting anything this time. Not a damn thing. When she walked into the kitchen the next morning around 7, the coffee was already brewed. 1 cup poured, hers, sitting on the counter getting cold. I'd eaten breakfast earlier, alone, out on the porch with my laptop open, reviewing contracts and financial projections like it was any other Wednesday morning. She stared at that single mug sitting there like it was evidence in a trial she didn't even know she was part of. Exhibit A, the beginning of the end. I didn't look up from my screen when she walked in, just kept scrolling through spreadsheets, sipping my own coffee that I'd brought outside with me. "You're being dramatic," she said, not even glancing away from her phone, like I was the problem, like I was the one who'd nuked our marriage the night before. I took another sip of coffee. "You said you're not playing wife. I'm just respecting the performance, honoring your boundaries." She scoffed, that dismissive little laugh she did when she thought someone was being ridiculous. "God, 1 comment and you act like I committed a crime. You're being so sensitive about everything lately." I finally looked up at her. Really looked, not just glancing in her direction, but actually seeing her clearly for maybe the first time in years. And what I saw wasn't my wife anymore. Wasn't Madison's mother, who I'd been supporting and caring for. Just someone I'd been carrying on my back for way too long. Someone who'd been weighing me down while contributing nothing but criticism and complaints. "You didn't commit a crime," I said evenly, keeping my voice level and calm. "You just quit, and I'm accepting your resignation. That's how this works in the real world." I stood up, grabbed my laptop and coffee mug, walked back into the guest room, and locked the door again. That soft click echoing through the house like a period at the end of a sentence. That's when she finally realized this wasn't just a fight that would blow over by the weekend. This was an exit strategy, and I'd already drafted all the terms in my head. Courtney expected the usual pattern we'd fallen into over 15 years. A day or 2 of cold shoulder, some tense silence around the house. Then I'd crack under the pressure, apologize for overreacting even though I hadn't done anything wrong, and we'd slip right back into our toxic routine like nothing ever happened. Rinse and repeat every few months. That's how it always worked in our marriage. I'd bend, she'd take. I'd accommodate, she'd demand more. Except I wasn't following that script anymore. The theater was closed. The lights were off. And I'd already torn up my actor's contract.
Day 2 started exactly like day 1. I got up at 5:30 in the morning, same as I always did. Made coffee, only enough for me this time, just 1 cup. No second mug sitting out waiting for her. No plate set out for breakfast. I ate alone on the patio, reviewing client files for an upcoming merger between 2 pharmaceutical distributors I'd been working on. The numbers were clean, straightforward. The deal would close smooth as butter. When Courtney finally came downstairs around 7, she found the kitchen completely empty. No coffee waiting, no breakfast prepared. Just the faint smell of coffee that had already been consumed an hour ago. The ghost of a routine that no longer existed. She walked to the patio door and stared at me through the glass, arms crossed over her chest. "Are we seriously not going to talk about this like adults?" she called out, her voice sharp with irritation. I didn't look up from my laptop, just kept scrolling through the asset evaluation spreadsheet, making notes in the margins, completely focused on my work. "Brian," her voice had an edge now, that tone she used when she expected me to jump and obey. "This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child." I took a sip of coffee, kept reading the financial projections on my screen, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. She stood there for another 30 seconds, maybe longer, waiting for me to blink first, waiting for me to crack like I always did. When I didn't, she huffed loudly and walked back inside. I heard the cabinet door slam shut, the microwave beep, her car start in the driveway 10 minutes later. I didn't move from my spot on the patio. Just sat there in the morning sunlight, completely unbothered, working on my laptop like it was any other day. Like my marriage hadn't just imploded 24 hours ago. Like my wife wasn't spiraling inside the house, trying to figure out why her usual manipulation tactics weren't landing. That evening, I came home at 6 o'clock sharp. Courtney was already there in the kitchen, reheating leftovers in the microwave. The smell of last night's Chinese food filled the air. She glanced at me when I walked in, probably expecting me to say something, to break the silence that was becoming heavier by the hour. I walked straight past her without a word, went directly to the guest room, changed into my workout gear, shorts, old college t-shirt, running shoes, and headed right back out the front door for a run. 5 miles through the neighborhood, pushing hard, letting the burn in my legs drown out everything else. When I got back an hour later, I was drenched in sweat, but my head was crystal clear. I showered in the guest bathroom, not our bathroom, the guest one, dried off, threw on clean clothes, and made myself a turkey sandwich in the kitchen. Grabbed some chips, a bottle of water, and took everything back to my room. Ate while catching up on work emails, responding to clients, scheduling meetings for the rest of the week. At 9:15, right when I was about to call it a night, she knocked on the guest room door. Not pounding, just 3 soft knocks that somehow sounded more desperate than if she'd been beating the door down. "Brian, come on, this is childish. We need to talk about this like adults." I didn't answer, just kept typing an email to a client about their Q3 projections. She tried the handle, locked, obviously. Had been locked since day 1 and would stay that way. "You can't just lock yourself away every single time you're upset about something," Courtney said through the door, her voice rising slightly. "This isn't healthy. This isn't how marriage works." Silence. I saved the email as a draft and opened another file. "Fine, be that way. Act like a damn child if that's what makes you feel better." Her footsteps retreated down the hallway. I heard our bedroom door, her bedroom door now, I guess, slam shut hard enough to rattle the pictures on the walls. Day 3 brought a whole new strategy. The texts started rolling in around mid-morning while I was in a meeting with a client. "Can we talk after work?" I saw it light up my phone screen during the presentation. Didn't open it, just let it sit there unread while I walked the client through their financial restructuring options. "You're really going to ignore me, seriously." That one came through an hour later. Didn't open that one either. "This is so petty, Brian, so incredibly petty and immature." By the end of the day, she'd sent 7 messages. I let them all stack up in my notifications, unread, little digital breadcrumbs showing her growing panic, her desperate need for me to engage with her drama. I wasn't playing that game anymore. Every unread message was a statement. You don't matter enough for a response. By day 4, she completely changed tactics. When I came home that evening, there was a bottle of wine sitting on the kitchen counter, some expensive red blend she knew I used to like, 2 glasses placed carefully beside it. Very deliberate, very calculated.
She was sitting on the couch in the living room when I walked in, magazines spread across her lap, trying her absolute hardest to look casual and relaxed, like she just happened to be chilling there, like the wine and glasses were just a coincidence, like this wasn't a carefully staged production designed to reel me back in. "Hey," she said as I came through the door, her tone way lighter than it had been in days, almost friendly, like we were roommates who got along just fine. "I thought maybe we could just talk tonight, clear the air, get back to normal." I looked at the wine bottle sitting there on the granite countertop, looked at her sitting on the couch with her magazine prop, looked at the whole performance she was putting on for an audience of 1. "I don't drink on Thursdays," I said evenly, which was actually true. I'd made that rule for myself years ago. No alcohol on weeknights unless it was a special occasion. But thanks anyway. I walked straight to the guest room without breaking stride. "Brian, seriously?" Her voice shot up about 3 octaves, that fake friendly tone dropping away instantly. "I'm trying here. I'm actually putting in effort to fix this, and you're just going to walk away like I don't even exist?" I closed the door, locked it. The soft click was my only answer. She didn't knock that night, but 11:47, I remember the exact time because I was still up reading contract amendments on my tablet. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean it like that. I was just tired and stressed that night. Can we please move past this? I miss you." I read the message, let it sit there for a full minute while I thought about what it actually meant. She wasn't sorry for what she said. She was sorry that it had consequences, sorry that her words had finally broken something that couldn't be superglued back together. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and went back to reading. Didn't reply, didn't acknowledge, just let that message hang out there in the digital void with all the others. The next morning, Friday, I was gone before she even woke up. I had an early breakfast meeting with a client in the city, a real meeting that had been on my calendar for 2 weeks, not an excuse, not a dodge, just perfect timing that worked completely in my favor. When I finally got home that evening around 6:30, Courtney was posted up in the kitchen with a glass in her hand. But it wasn't wine this time, it was gin. Straight gin in a rocks glass with 1 sad ice cube floating in it. That's when I knew the panic was really setting in for real. Wine was her social drink, the thing she sipped at dinner parties and book clubs. Gin was her father's drink, the man she claimed to hate, the man she'd spent hours telling me horror stories about. And she was drinking it straight. No tonic, no lime, just raw gin like she was trying to burn away whatever feelings were bubbling up inside her. "How long are you going to keep this up?" she demanded the second I walked through the door, not even letting me set my briefcase down. I paused in the doorway, my briefcase still in my hand, and looked at her directly for the first time in days. Really looked at her. Not a glance, not avoiding eye contact, but a full-on direct stare that made her shift uncomfortably on her feet. "Keep what up?" I asked calmly, genuinely curious what she thought was happening here. "This!" She gestured wildly at the space between us, sloshing gin over the rim of her glass onto the kitchen floor. "The silent treatment, the locked doors, acting like I don't even exist in my own house. How much longer are you planning to punish me?" "You said you're not playing wife," I replied, keeping my voice level and controlled. No emotion, just stating facts. "I'm just honoring that boundary you set, respecting your wishes. Isn't that what you wanted? Space from me?" Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish gasping for air. "I didn't mean—" "You did." I cut her off cleanly, and I believed you. I took you at your word, like adults are supposed to do. I walked past her toward the guest room. She grabbed my arm as I passed, her fingers digging into my bicep with surprising strength. "Brian, please, we need to fix this. I can't keep living like this." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then slowly lifted my eyes to meet hers. Then don't. I pulled my arm free, not rough, not angry, just a simple removal of her grip, and continued walking. Behind me, I heard the glass shatter against the kitchen tile. Gin and ice and broken crystal scattered across the floor. I didn't turn around, just kept walking to the guest room and shut the door. Locked it, that soft click that had become the soundtrack of our dying marriage. That night, she texted 4 more times over the course of 3 hours, each one more desperate than the last. Please, we need to fix this. I miss you. Answer me. Why are you doing this to us? I didn't open a single one, didn't read them beyond the preview that popped up on my lock screen. Because the moment I responded, even just to tell her to stop texting, she'd know I was still reachable, still accessible, still someone she could pull back in with the right combination of words and tears and manipulation. But that door was closed now. The theater had shut down, the lights were off, and the actors had gone home. She was starting to realize, slowly but surely, that she'd been performing for an empty house this whole time, that her audience of 1 had walked out during the first act and wasn't coming back for the encore. By the end of that first week, something fundamental had shifted in our house. It wasn't anger anymore, wasn't even really conflict. It was just absence, the complete withdrawal of my presence from her life. And absence, I was learning, could be the most devastating weapon of all. Because you can't fight someone who won't engage. You can't manipulate someone who's already checked out. You can't win back someone who's decided you're not worth the effort anymore. Courtney was starting to understand that, and it was absolutely terrifying her. By the end of the first week, Courtney finally realized that silence wasn't just a phase I was going through. It wasn't some temporary mood that would blow over after a few days. It was a full-blown strategy, and she desperately needed backup, reinforcements, people who could crack through the wall I had built. Sunday morning, I heard her voice coming from the living room while I was in the guest room working on my laptop. That forced, overly casual tone she always used when she was trying to spin a story, control a narrative, make herself look like the victim. "Hey, Steph, it's me. Yeah, I know it's been a while since we talked. Listen, I just wanted to check in. Brian's been acting really strange lately, really off." I kept working on my financial projections for the pharmaceutical merger, pulling up spreadsheets and cross-referencing data. Numbers don't lie, people do, and Courtney was proving that truth every single day. "No, nothing like that," she continued, her voice dropping lower. "He's just so distant lately, cold, won't talk to me about anything. I honestly don't know what I did wrong. I'm really worried about him." I almost laughed out loud. She knew exactly what she did. She just didn't want to own it. 15 minutes later, her voice got quieter, tighter, that edge creeping in when things weren't going her way. "Okay, yeah, I guess I'll figure it out on my own then. Thanks, Steph." The call ended abruptly. No warm goodbye, no plans to meet up for coffee and talk it through, just the hollow click of someone who'd been politely dismissed and hung up on. That same afternoon, she tried Colin, my best friend since college, the guy who stood up at our wedding wearing that ridiculous powder blue tux, who'd endured Courtney's passive-aggressive comments at every single barbecue and dinner party for 15 years straight, and still showed up with a smile on his face and a six-pack in his hand. I was out in the garage organizing my tools, sorting through everything methodically, moving the stuff I'd need for my new life, leaving behind what didn't matter anymore. Through the open window, I could hear her voice drifting out from the kitchen. "Hey, Colin, it's Courtney. Is Brian okay? He's been really off this week, acting super weird and distant." There was a pause. I could almost hear Colin's careful response on the other end. "Oh, he told you we're having issues?" Her voice tightened up like a wire about to snap. "I see. Well, if you talk to him, can you tell him to call me? We really need to work this out." Another longer pause. Whatever Colin said, it clearly wasn't what she wanted to hear. "Right, okay then. Thanks anyway." Click. The call ended just like that. I continued sorting through my toolbox, Wrenches on the left side, screwdrivers on the right. Everything categorized, everything organized, everything accounted for. Just like I was doing with my entire life. Monday afternoon, she got absolutely desperate. She called Pat, my barber, the guy who'd been cutting my hair for 12 straight years. Old-school Italian dude who ran a 2-chair shop downtown, the kind of place where men went to think, not talk, where silence was respected and gossip died at the door. I found out about the call later that afternoon when I stopped in for my usual trim, my every 3 weeks appointment that had been on the books for a month. "Your wife called," Pat said, snapping the black cape around my shoulders with practiced efficiency. He met my eyes in the mirror, his expression completely neutral. "I know," I said, settling into the worn leather chair that had held me dozens of times before. "Wanted to know if you'd mentioned anything weird lately, any strange behavior, mood changes, concerning comments." He made air quotes with his scissors, a slight smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "What did you tell her?" I asked, genuinely curious how this conversation had played out. "That you want it short on the sides, neat on top, same as always." Pat grinned at me in the mirror, his clippers already buzzing to life in his hand. That wasn't what she meant, of course, but it was all she's getting from me. I nodded, feeling something close to gratitude wash over me. "Appreciate that, Pat, more than you know." "You doing all right?" he asked, starting to work on my fade with expert precision. The familiar buzz of the clippers was oddly comforting. "Better than I've been in years," I said honestly. "Clearer, too." He nodded, like he understood exactly what I meant. Didn't push for details, didn't ask follow-up questions, just cut my hair in comfortable silence and let me sit with my thoughts. That night when I got home, Courtney was waiting for me in the living room, like she'd been posted up there for hours. Arms crossed tight over her chest, face set in hard lines, anger radiating off her in waves. "You turned everyone against me," she said the second I walked through the door. Not a question, an accusation. I set my keys on the counter with a soft clink. "I didn't turn anyone against you. I just stopped carrying you on my back. There's a difference." "What's that supposed to mean?" Her voice had that sharp edge that used to make me immediately backtrack, apologize, try to smooth things over. "Not anymore." "It means people like me for me," I said, calmly, looking her straight in the eyes. "Not because I come as a package deal with you. They're my friends because of who I am, not because I'm your husband. You're just figuring that out now." Her jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscles jumping. "So this is about ego, about proving you're better than me, more liked, more popular?" "No," I said, keeping my voice even and controlled. "This is about me finally believing I deserve better than someone who treats marriage like a part-time job she can clock out of whenever she feels like it." I walked to the guest room without waiting for her response. She didn't follow me this time, didn't pound on the door, didn't text me later demanding answers. But later that night, I noticed something new. Small things scattered around the house. The wedding album sitting on the dining room table, open to photos of us looking young and hopeful. A framed picture of us in Napa Valley on our honeymoon placed prominently on the kitchen counter. An old anniversary card I'd written her years ago, propped against the toaster, my handwriting declaring love I didn't feel anymore. Breadcrumbs, reminders, little emotional landmines designed to make me nostalgic, guilty, soft enough to take her back. I left everything exactly where she'd placed it. Didn't touch a single photo, didn't move a single card, didn't acknowledge the emotional manipulation for what it was. Because nostalgia is just a prettier word for denial, and I was completely done living in the past we'd pretended was good. Saturday morning came around, 8:12 a.m. to be exact. Courtney shot upright in bed. I could hear the sudden movement through the walls, her phone glowing in her hand. I was already wide awake in the guest room, going through my morning emails with coffee in hand. The notification on her phone was simple enough. Blue icon from our bank. Familiar logo she'd seen 1,000 times. Subject line: joint checking account. Closure confirmation. I heard her feet hit the hallway floor about 30 seconds later. Fast, angry footsteps pounding toward my room. She didn't knock this time, just tried the handle immediately. Still locked. Always locked. "Brian," her voice was sharp as broken glass, "open this door right now." I took a slow sip of my coffee, savored the bitter taste, and waited. "You closed the account,"
She was shouting now, not even trying to keep her voice down. "You emptied our entire joint checking account? Where's all the money?" I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it calmly. She was standing there in her pajamas, phone clutched in her hand like it was evidence in a criminal trial, hair a complete mess, face pale with shock and rage. "I restructured our finances," I said evenly, like I was explaining a simple business transaction. "The joint account was closed. All funds were transferred to a new account under my name only. You're no longer an authorized user on anything." Her face went from pale to sheet white. "You can't do that. That's illegal. That's our money." "I can," I corrected calmly. "I was the primary account holder. You were just an authorized user on my account. I revoked that authorization. It's completely legal." "Where's the money?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Somewhere you don't have access to anymore," I said simply. "That's my money too," she yelled, her voice hitting a pitch I'd never heard before. "It was," I corrected her again. "Now it's mine, legally. Check with a lawyer if you want confirmation." "What about the bills?" She was starting to panic now, the reality hitting her like a freight train. "The mortgage, the insurance, all of it. How am I supposed to pay for anything?" "All transferred to your name," I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the screen with confirmation emails. "Electric, water, gas, car insurance, phone plan, Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, all the streaming services, everything. You're the primary account holder now. Congratulations on your newfound independence." "I don't even know the passwords to half that stuff," she practically shrieked. "You should probably reset them then. Google has a pretty straightforward password recovery process. I'm sure you'll figure it out." "This is insane." Her whole body was shaking now. "You're doing this just to punish me. This is financial abuse." "No," I said, looking her dead in the eyes. "I'm doing this because you said you're not playing wife, so I stopped playing husband, and that includes financial management, bill paying, all of it."
"You wanted independence," I continued, my voice still calm and level. "Here it is, all wrapped up with a bow. Welcome to adulthood, Courtney." I closed the door in her face before she could respond. Behind the locked door, I heard her standing there for a solid minute, breathing hard, probably trying to process what had just happened. Then her footsteps retreated back down the hall, slower this time, heavier. I sat back down at the small desk in the guest room and went back to my contract review like nothing had happened. Outside my door, I could hear her in the kitchen, laptop clicking open, keys tapping frantically as she tried to access accounts she'd never paid attention to before, bills she'd never looked at, passwords she'd never needed because I'd always handled absolutely everything. The utilities, the subscriptions, the car payments she didn't even know existed on autopay, the insurance premiums, the property taxes that came twice a year, the HOA fees, the lawn service, the pest control. Every single thing that kept our life running smooth had been managed by me, paid by me, handled by me. She'd lived in the infrastructure I built like it was just magic. Like electricity and water and internet just appeared out of thin air because the universe owed her comfort. Like bills paid themselves and services renewed automatically without anyone lifting a finger. Now she was learning, really learning, for the first time in 15 years, what it actually cost to run a life, what it took to be a functional adult. By afternoon, she'd managed to crack into maybe 2 accounts. Everything else was locked behind 2-factor authentication that routed straight to my email address, the email she didn't have access to, the phone number she couldn't intercept. She called me around 3 in the afternoon. I was in a meeting with a client, so I let it go to voicemail, didn't even glance at the notification. She texted 5 minutes later. "This is financial abuse. You know that, right? What you're doing is illegal and abusive, and I could report you." I waited until I was done with my meeting, then replied with just one line. "No, this is financial equality. Welcome to the real world. Enjoy your independence." That evening when I came home, I found her on the couch, absolutely surrounded by papers. Bills, statements, bank documents, spreadsheets she'd printed out but clearly had no idea how to read. She looked exhausted, defeated, like she'd been fighting a war she didn't know how to win. She looked up at me when I walked in, and for the first time I saw real desperation in her eyes. Not manipulation, not performance, actual fear. "I can't do all this," she said quietly, her voice stripped of all the anger and edge from this morning. "I don't understand half these accounts. I don't know what's due when. I can't keep track of everything." "You'll figure it out," I said, setting my briefcase down by the door. "Or you'll hire someone to help you. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." "Brian, please," her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, I really am. Can we just reset? Go back to normal? Back to how things were?" I looked at her, really looked at her, sitting there, drowning in paperwork, finally understanding what I'd been carrying alone for over a decade. And I saw someone who wasn't sorry for what she'd said or done. She was sorry for what it cost her. "There is no normal," I said finally, my voice quiet but firm. "There's just what happens next. And what happens next is you figure out your own life." I walked to the guest room, locked the door behind me, and went back to reviewing contracts. Outside, I could hear the wind picking up, branches scraping against the windows. The house settled around me with creaks and groans, and for the first time in 15 years, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a property I was divesting from. Clean, methodical, final. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon about a week later. I was in a conference room downtown, 3 floors up in a glass building, finalizing terms for a major tech acquisition. My phone buzzed on the polished table. Madison's name lit up the screen. I excused myself immediately and stepped into the hallway, closing the conference room door behind me. "Hey, Maddie, everything okay?" "Can we meet?" Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the stress underneath. "Just you and me. Coffee or something?" "Of course. When were you thinking?" "Today? After your work?" There was an urgency there that made my chest tighten. I checked my watch. 3:30 p.m. I can do 5 o'clock? The usual place near campus? "Yeah, thanks, Brian." She hung up before I could ask what this was about, which told me everything I needed to know. Courtney had gotten to her. At 5 sharp, I walked into the cafe 3 blocks from Northwestern's campus. Madison was already there, posted up at a corner table, nursing an iced latte that looked mostly melted. Her laptop was closed in front of her, unusual for her, since she normally had 3 tabs open and 2 textbooks spread out. She looked tired, stressed, like she'd been carrying something heavy. When she saw me walking toward her, she tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes, not even close. I sat down across from her, didn't order anything yet, just focused on her completely. "What's going on, Maddie?" She took a deep breath, like she was preparing to dive underwater. "Mom called me last night, 3 times in a row, then texted me like 15 times after that. I've never seen her this frantic." I waited, giving her space to get it all out. "She wanted me to talk to you, to convince you to, I don't know, come back home, stop ignoring her, give her another chance. She was crying, Brian, like really sobbing on the phone. I've never heard her cry like that before." "What did you tell her?" I asked quietly, already knowing this conversation was a minefield. "I told her I'd talk to you," Madison said, looking down at her melted latte. "But honestly, Brian, I don't even know what to say right now. She won't tell me what actually happened between you, just that you're being cruel and punishing her for absolutely no reason, that you're overreacting to one tiny comment." I leaned back in my chair, pulled out my phone, and opened my voice memo app. I'd started recording our conversations 2 weeks ago, not for court, not for lawyers, just for clarity. For moments exactly like this one, when Courtney would spin her version of events and I'd need proof of what really went down. I found the recording from that night, the night everything died. Hit play and set my phone on the table between us. Courtney's voice came through the speaker, clear and cold as ice. "Don't touch me. I'm not playing wife tonight." Then my voice, quiet but final. "Perfect. You never will be again." Madison's face went completely still. She stared at the phone like I'd just shown her something obscene, something that shouldn't exist in the real world. Her hand came up to cover her mouth. I stopped the recording, let the silence sit between us for a moment. That's what she said to me, word for word,
when I tried to hug her like I always did when I came home from work. Madison sat back hard in her chair, eyes wide, processing. She said that? Exactly like that? Exactly like that, I confirmed. No context misunderstood, no words taken out of proportion. That's what came out of her mouth when I tried to show her basic affection. She was quiet for a long moment, just staring at the phone on the table like it might explain something her mother couldn't. Then she looked up at me, and I saw something shift in her expression. Not anger exactly. Understanding. "Brian," she said carefully, choosing her words like she was walking through a minefield. "I need to tell you something. Something I probably should have told you a long time ago." I waited, my stomach dropping slightly. "Last year, around November, I think, Mom told me she thought you were settling, that you stayed with her because it was comfortable and safe, not because you actually loved her." Madison's voice got quieter. "She said you weren't ambitious enough, that you'd never really be successful like her friends' husbands, that you were kind of just there." My jaw tightened, but I didn't interrupt. "She'd compare you to her friends' husbands all the time," Madison continued, looking guilty now. "Their bigger houses, their fancier jobs, their expensive cars. She made it sound like you were some kind of, I don't know, charity case that she was stuck with, like she'd settled for less than she deserved." I felt something cold settle deep in my chest. Not surprise, honestly, just confirmation of what I'd suspected for years, but never wanted to admit out loud. "Maddie," I said carefully, leaning forward, "I need you to know something really important. I love you like you're my own daughter. I have since you were 5 years old and I met you at that playground. None of this, none of what's happening between your mom and me changes that, not one bit." Her eyes filled with tears immediately. "I know, and honestly, you've been more of a father to me than Greg ever was. Way more." "Your mom and I are done," I said quietly but firmly. "That's not changing, but you and I, we are not done. That's completely separate. You understand that?" She nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Do you have a plan? Like, are you actually leaving her? Filing for divorce?" "Yes," I said simply. "That's exactly what I'm doing." She absorbed that information, took a shaky breath, then nodded slowly. "Good." I blinked, surprised. "Good?" "Good, Brian," Madison said firmly, wiping the last of her tears away. "I've watched you take care of her for 15 straight years. Pay for everything, fix everything, handle everything like it was your job. And she's never once said thank you. Not really, not in any way that mattered." I felt my throat tighten up. Hearing it from Madison, from someone who'd lived in our house, witnessed everything up close, hit different than just knowing it myself. "I see it," she continued, her voice stronger now. "I've always seen it, even when I was younger and didn't have the words to explain what I was watching. You showed up every single day. You were there for every school event, every college visit, every late-night panic attack before exams. You acted like a real father when you didn't have to." "Maddie," I started, but she cut me off. "I'm not picking sides," she said quickly, then paused and shook her head. "Actually, no, that's a lie. If I were picking sides, I'd pick you every single time, because you actually showed up for me, for us, and she just took it all for granted." We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling between us like something solid and real. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand tight. "Whatever you need," she said, looking me straight in the eyes. "I'm here. I've got your back on this." I squeezed back, feeling gratitude wash over me. "Thank you. That means more than you know." When I got home that night, around 8, Courtney was waiting for me in the living room. She'd clearly been sitting there for a while, probably ever since she knew Madison and I were meeting. Her face was tight, anxious, like she'd been running worst-case scenarios through her head for hours. "What did you tell her?" she demanded the second I walked through the door. Not, how did it go, or is everything okay? Just straight to accusation. The truth, I said simply, setting my keys down. You turned my own daughter against me. Her voice cracked, rage and panic mixing together. My own child. No, I said calmly, looking her dead in the eyes. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering for you. I walked to the guest room without another word. She didn't follow this time, didn't pound on the door, didn't send desperate texts later that night. But I heard her behind that closed door. Real sobs this time. Not the performative crying she'd done before when she wanted something. Not manipulation tactics. Just the raw, ugly sound of someone finally understanding what they'd lost and knowing they'd never get it back. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and stared at the wall. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness exactly, not satisfaction, just clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop lying to yourself about what's real. Madison saw the truth. Colin knew the truth. Pat knew the truth. Even Courtney's own sister had basically told her she was on her own. The people who actually mattered, the ones who knew me, really knew me, were standing with me. And the people who only valued what I could provide were finding out I wasn't available anymore. That night, I slept better than I had in months.
The letter arrived on a Thursday morning about a week later. Plain white envelope, no return address anywhere on it. Postmark from Denver, Colorado. I almost tossed it in the recycling bin with the junk mail, but something made me open it instead. Inside was a single handwritten note on hotel stationery, the fancy kind with embossed letterhead. Brian, we haven't met, but I think we should. I'm in town next week for business. Wednesday, 6 p.m. at Miller's Tavern downtown. I'll be at the bar. Greg Hamilton. I stared at that note for a solid 5 minutes, reading it over and over. Greg Hamilton, Courtney's first husband, Madison's biological father, the man who'd walked out on them when Maddie was barely 2 years old and never looked back. The deadbeat dad I'd heard horror stories about for 15 years. What the hell did he want? Wednesday came around. I arrived at Miller's Tavern at 5:50, 10 minutes early, like always. Scanned the bar area, looking for someone who matched the vague description Madison had given me years ago. A man in his early 50s sat alone at the far end, nursing what looked like scotch on the rocks. Graying hair, expensive watch on his wrist, tired eyes that had seen some things. He spotted me almost immediately, nodded once and gestured to the empty bar stool right beside him. I walked over and sat down. The bartender came over within seconds. "Bourbon," I said. "Neat." Greg waited until my drink arrived, amber liquid glowing in the dim bar light. Then he raised his glass slightly, a bitter smile on his face. "To bad decisions and worse wives," he said. I didn't drink to that toast, just looked at him, waiting for him to get to whatever point he'd come here to make. "You're wondering why I'm here," Greg said, reading my expression easily. "The thought crossed my mind," I admitted. He took a long sip of his scotch, set the glass down carefully on the polished wood. "Madison called me 2 weeks ago, first time in 8 years. Told me you and Courtney are spreading up." "We are," I confirmed. "That's happening." "Good," he said simply, and something in his voice made me sit up straighter. "Let me save you a whole lot of time, money, and pain, Brian. I know what she told me about me over the years, that I was a deadbeat father, that I abandoned them when things got tough, that I was cruel or distant or emotionally unavailable or whatever version she's been spinning." "Something like that," I said carefully. "It's bullshit," Greg said flatly. "All of it." I waited, letting him continue at his own pace. "Courtney and I were married for 4 years, he said, his voice going flat and distant, like he was reciting facts from a police report. "The first 2 were fine, good even. The last 2 were absolute hell on earth. She'd ice me out for days at a time, belittle me in front of our friends at parties, make me feel like I was never good enough, never doing enough, never being enough for her standards." My stomach dropped. This was sounding way too familiar. "And then one night," Greg continued, his voice dropping lower, "I came home from work and tried to kiss her hello. Just a normal greeting, you know?
The kind of thing married people do every single day. My heart started pounding. I knew exactly where this was going. She stepped back, Greg said, looking straight at me now. And she said, "I'm not playing wife tonight," like it was a role she could just clock out of whenever she felt like it. The air left my lungs completely. I felt like I'd been sucker punched in the gut. The exact same words, the exact same phrase. She'd done this before. This was a pattern, not a one-time breakdown. "I left the next day," Greg said quietly. "Filed for divorce a week later. She got full custody of Madison because I didn't fight it. I was broken, man, completely burned out. I just wanted away from her as fast as possible." "But you disappeared," I said, finding my voice. "Madison thinks you didn't care about her at all, that you just abandoned her." "I sent child support every single month for 16 years, Greg said, pulling out his phone. "Never missed a payment, not one. $1,800 a month, like clockwork." He showed me his screen, scanned images of bank statements going back years. Payment after payment after payment. All of them marked child support, Madison Hamilton. "Courtney told Madison I never sent a dime," Greg continued, his jaw tight. "She pocketed every single check and lied straight to our daughter's face about it. Made me out to be the villain while she was cashing checks I sent for Madison's care." "Jesus Christ," I muttered, feeling sick. "Why didn't you fight that?" I asked. "Why didn't you correct the record? Tell Madison the truth?" "Because I was a coward," he admitted, and I respected the honesty. "I didn't want to go back into that courtroom, didn't want to see Courtney's face again, didn't want to relive any of it. So I sent the checks and told myself Madison would figure it out when she got older." He took another drink, finishing his scotch. "She does this, Brian. It's a pattern. She finds good men, stable men, men who'll take care of her and give her the life she wants. And then she drains them dry until there's nothing left. When you're empty, when you've got nothing more to give, she moves on to the next one." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Because Madison deserves to know the truth about who her mother really is," he said firmly. "And because you deserve to know you're not crazy. This isn't on you. It's her. It's always been her." I took a long drink of my bourbon, let it burn all the way down. "Does Madison know you're here, that we're meeting?" "Not yet," Greg said, "but I'd like to see her, if she's willing. I'd like to finally tell her my side of everything. I'll talk to her, set something up if she wants to meet." Greg nodded gratefully. "One more thing, and this is important. When you file for divorce, get a forensic accountant. Courtney's hiding money somewhere." The Forbes notification came through on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing acquisition documents at my desk. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the screen. Tech startup Neural Sync, acquired by Microsoft for $47 million. Early investors see major returns. I clicked the article, scrolled down through the corporate jargon and market analysis, and there it was. My name listed right there among the early-stage investors who'd backed the company 7 years ago. I'd put in $25,000 back in 2018, a calculated risk on a friend's AI project that seemed promising. I'd mentioned it to Courtney exactly once. She'd rolled her eyes hard and called it throwing money away on tech nonsense before going back to her phone. My share of the acquisition? $4.2 million. The wire transfer would hit my account in 30 days. I sat back in my chair and just stared at the ceiling for a solid minute. $4.2 million. After taxes, roughly $2.8 million in my pocket. Money that Courtney had absolutely no legal claim to because I'd invested it before we even got married, and the prenup I'd insisted on, the one she'd signed without reading at that 4th of July party back in 2009, protected all premarital assets and their appreciation. She didn't even know the prenup existed. We'd signed it at her friend's lake house. She'd been 3 glasses of champagne deep, laughing with her girls, barely glancing at it before scribbling her signature. My lawyer had been extremely thorough. Very, very thorough. That evening, I came home to find Courtney at the kitchen table with her laptop, her face completely pale. "When were you going to tell me?" she asked, turning the screen toward me. The Forbes article, my name highlighted in yellow. "I had just found out this morning," I said calmly, setting my briefcase down. $4 million! Her voice was shaking. "You have $4 million coming and you didn't think to mention it? We could pay off the house. We could travel. We could finally—" "We aren't doing anything," I cut her off cleanly. "That money is mine, from an investment I made before we got married. It has nothing to do with you." "You're married," she yelled, standing up so fast her chair fell backward. "What's yours is mine. That's how marriage works." "Actually, no." I pulled out my phone, opened the PDF of our prenuptial agreement, and showed her the signature page. Her signature, clear as day, dated July 4th, 2009. Her face went from pale to completely white, like all the blood had just drained out. "What is this?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "A prenup? You signed it at the Hendersons' lake house, remember? You were drinking champagne with your friends. You said it was just a formality and signed it without reading a single page." She stared at the document like it was written in some alien language. "This can't be legal. You tricked me. You got me drunk and made me sign something I didn't understand." "I gave you a legally binding contract. You had the option of independent counsel. You chose not to use it. That's not trickery. That's negligence on your part." Her hands started shaking. "So you're just going to keep millions of dollars to yourself while I'm drowning in bills you stuck me with?" "Yes," I said simply, "and it's completely legal." "That's not fair," she screamed. "Life rarely is, but it's legal. Check with a lawyer if you want confirmation." 4 months later, the divorce was finalized. Clean, simple, over. The prenup had held up without a single crack in court. Courtney's lawyer had tried every angle imaginable. Argued duress, claimed she didn't understand what she was signing, even suggested I'd deliberately gotten her drunk to manipulate her. The judge reviewed all the evidence. The independent counsel clause in the contract, the 2-week waiting period before we actually signed, the notarized statements. Denied every single motion Courtney's lawyer filed. She walked away with the house, which she'd have to maintain and pay for herself now, the car that was in her name, and whatever was left in her personal accounts. About $80,000 total when you added it all up. I got everything else. The investments, the business income, the neural sync payout sitting pretty in my account, my retirement funds, the new condo I'd bought downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the whole city. No alimony, no ongoing obligations, no strings attached. Madison got her trust fund. $500,000 managed by an independent trustee until she turned 25. When I told her about it, she cried and called me the best father she'd ever had. That moment alone made everything worth it. I was sitting in my new place when Colin called one evening. "Heard through the grapevine that Courtney's engaged already," he said. "Already?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "To who?" "Some regional manager she met at a conference. Older guy, retired executive type. Has money, apparently." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Of course she is. That didn't take long at all." "You okay with that?" Colin asked carefully. "Colin," I said, looking out at the city lights below me, "I genuinely don't care what she does anymore. She's not my problem, not my circus, not my monkeys." "Fair enough. Hey, Sarah asked about you yesterday. Said you two should grab coffee sometime. I think she's interested, man." Sarah Torres, the venture capitalist I'd met at the gala. Brilliant, successful, gorgeous. Someone who actually had her own life together and didn't need me to carry her. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Maybe I'll reach out to her." "You should," Colin said. "You deserve someone who actually appreciates you." After we hung up, I walked to the window and just stood there. The city stretched out below me, all lights and movement and life. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "Brunch tomorrow? I want to see your new place. Heard it's amazing." I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. My treat." Another text came through. "Sarah. Hey, stranger, still up for that coffee we talked about? I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds, then typed, "How about dinner instead? Friday at 7?" Her response came back fast. "Perfect. It's a date." I set my phone down and looked around my condo. Modern, clean, mine. No wedding photos on the walls, no reminders of a life I'd outgrown. Just space, potential, freedom. Courtney had asked me once, right before the divorce was finalized, if I ever regretted walking away. I told her the truth. The only thing I regretted was not walking away sooner. Now I was 48 years old, financially secure, emotionally free, and for the first time in 15 years, I was building a life completely on my terms. No performances, no scripts, no pretending. Just me, finally living.